Are we here? Are we here? How many know it's a good day to be in God's house? Our deaf congregation is joining us this morning because they want to hear some of our stories from Ukraine. And so, welcome to our deaf congregation. This is how you cheer deaf style, like this. Okay? And just a few more coming through, and we're all good. I want to welcome you to Crossfire. I've been away a couple weeks. I don't know if anyone noticed, but 6 of us were away, and many of you have texted us and Facebooked us and emailed us and everything else to say welcome home. And I think I can speak on behalf of the team to say thanks. We're glad to be home, and also probably a piece of us is still back in Ukraine, so, give us a day or two to adjust, and we will keep on functioning. But for some of you, this is your 110th, 1000th time here. Thanks for coming back. Linda, thank you. And for some of us, we're brand new. It's first Sunday, and so welcome to you as well. We're glad that you're here. And so I have, I'm sure, some announcements and stuff like that. I have an offering to take. I'm right out of my rhythm. Right out of my rhythm. Can I just say to you guys, thank you for all that you give. Thank you because it helps us to pay our bills, that we're all in this together. This isn't just giving towards some faceless institution. This is a place that is us. Each of us is the face of Crossfire. And when each of us does our part and gives what God has called us to give, then we continue on and we do the work God has called us to do. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So ushers, come on forward this morning. We'll take this morning's tithes and offerings. Our God, I want to say thank you that you continue to provide jobs for us, you provide income for us, so that we can live generously in the way that you've called us to live. And for some of us, that is more of a sacrifice than for others. And we acknowledge that right out loud. And we say, God, we choose to give sacrificially because that's what you called us to do, each of us. So we give knowing that all you've given us is yours anyway. And we ask that you would take what's given and you would stretch it further than makes sense. But I also pray, God, that what's left would also stretch further than makes sense, so that each person here is also sees you at work in their lives in a financial, miraculous way as we give to you. In Jesus' name, amen. I need somebody's, there we go. That's great. And let me make some announcements this morning. Our Good Food Box. If you like to order our Good Food Box that comes through Environment Hamilton, it is due, the money and the orders are due this Tuesday. Say that with me, this Tuesday. And somebody's going to contact me and say, what about Wednesday? Okay? What's the day that we just all said together? Tuesday. Now, I'll let you in on a secret, okay? If you drop your envelope through the slot before we get here on Wednesday, you can still get in on the Tuesday order, okay? But if you contact us halfway through Wednesday and go, how about now? The odds are we're going to go, darn, we can take your order and put it towards next month. Okay? So Tuesday's the day you're going for. Tuesday is the day. There are $10 orders. There are $15 orders. You could see all the information. It's on the website of Environment Hamilton, and there's posters up in various places. And it's really a good deal. It's kind of a no-brainer. You get basically $25 worth of produce for $15. So that's a good thing. So you order it this Tuesday, pick it up a week from Wednesday between 3 and 7 p.m. Another announcement. I heard that Joanne Goodwin did great here last Sunday. Is that true? I heard she was just fantastic. And that's not actually an announcement, just I heard it and I thought I'd throw it out there. You're going to see on the screens that she's coming again. She's not. I just haven't had time to change the announcement since I got home, okay? So she's not coming back. Don't get your hopes up and try not to be too disappointed that you have to live with who's here. And then we have next Sunday, we have Supper and a Story. It starts at 6:30. The cost is, we ask if you can help us out with $2 per person or $5 per family. We haven't done Supper and a Story in a while, so some of you might wonder what it is. It's supper, and then there's a story. And the story is someone in our congregation who we prearrange that comes and they just tell their story. We've found it's one of the best ways for us to all get to know each other a little bit. And so we start at 6:30. You're going to come in the second door. You're going to go down to the gym. That's where it takes place. It's going to be, $2, $5. It's going to be a simple supper. And then Cynthia Condi is telling her story. And now apparently, I know, right? It's going to be fantastic. Now, I heard there was some confusion while I was gone in who exactly was telling their story. And it would be easy for me to go, good grief, I go away and nobody. But I want you to know the confusion is a result of me because I sent some mixed messages and then I left the country. And so I'm sorry about that. My apologies. My apologies to you, Dave, who took the brunt of it. And Cynthia is definitely telling her story, right, Cynthia? It's Cynthia. That's who we have. So that's next Sunday night. We would love to have all of you here. Saturday, November 23rd, Betty Cooper and a group of people from Crossfire have been working on a drama. They've been working on it for quite some time. It's called Two Masters, and it's going to be on Saturday, November 23rd. Betty has some flyers out there that you can grab so you can get some information. It's going to be the 3rd. You know, we had the kids do a cry for help in September, and then we had Megan who did Emo Well Project in October. And now in November, we have Betty doing Two Masters. And it's just a thing that sort of evolved organically that we didn't plan and didn't really, put a whole theme. And then God just brought it all together. And it's kind of cool when God does that. Goes, you know what, I got this one. Let me line it up. And so that's going to be on Saturday, November 23rd. And so those are the things that are happening. If you want to know more, look on our website, look on our Facebook page. We're pretty active in that space, and all is well. I don't know whether I'm supposed to dismiss the kids or not. I am not to dismiss the kids. They're staying. Awesome. We have kids, we have deaf, we have all the regulars, and it's awesome. So we have a team that has just come back from Ukraine. I'm going to ask that team, come on down. And I get the end seat, but you guys can have all the rest, okay? And what's going to happen is, I didn't get a chance to tell you this, so because we have the deaf here, Adele is translating, and she's going to, you guys have been working with translators for 2 weeks. Okay, so you know how that works? And so if she turns around and says, can you slow down a little, just slow down a little, just to accommodate, so that everybody can hear what's happening. I wanted to ask, we did this last year, and we found it worked the best to give everybody a chance to tell a story of something that happened. And the way that we found was best for it to happen was if I set up kind of the schedule and gave you an outline of everything that happened, because I don't want each team member to have to try to give you background and explain all that's happening. So let me run through what happened in the 13 days that we were away. I'm going to set the whole thing up for you, and then I'm going to let each of them take a few minutes and tell a story from something they did. Does that sound good? So we have a whole mix of things that we do when we're in Ukraine. And basically it blends into 2 parts. You're going to see pictures going by. They're not necessarily what I'm talking about at that moment. Just enjoy them as they go by. We have 2 general areas in which we work. One is with Ed Dixon's ministry, which is called Loads of Love, which tends to be with children and youth. So it may be orphanages, it may be a boarding school, it may be children with disabilities, all of that kind of stuff. And we work and do a whole bunch of stuff in various institutions that he is connected with and has been pouring into. The other thing we do is we work with local churches that are there in Kriva Rog, in the city where we go to. And as most of you know, there's one big church called Church of Praise. And you may hear us talking about Pastor Gregory. That's his church. It's 800 or 1,000 people. And they've planted hundreds of other churches. Hundreds of other little churches. And those little churches are in tiny villages that are outside of the city. And so those village churches are a lot of the places we spend our evenings. We also spend some time in the big church on a couple times during the time that we're there, but most of our services that we run are out in the tiny little villages. Now in Canada, just to give you just a quick understanding of what happens in Canada, you know, in the core of our cities, although it's starting to change, but the core of our cities tends to be where, you know, the income is a little bit lower and all of that. And if you move out to the suburbs, like, you know, Ancaster or Mount Hope or something like, then everybody's, generally speaking, you know, the economic thing goes up a little higher. It's the opposite in Ukraine. So in the villages that are outside the cities, desperate poverty. And these churches could have 3 people in them, they could have 8 people in them, they could have 20 people in them. And so that's where we go. Everybody's squished into one space, and it's just fantastic. So So let me just run through what happened. So there's those two areas that we connect with. So I got my piece of paper here, and I'm really missing having a stand, but that's okay. I can do this. So we got there on Saturday night, about midnight, after we traveled about 25 hours. We arrived in Creva Rogue Saturday night, just around 11 o'clock or midnight. The next morning, we got up. We went to a village church in the morning. Then we had lunch with the pastor. Then we went to a rehab center for kids, which is, thank you so much, which is has changed a little over the years. So you've heard us talk about a rehab center before, which was only for boys, and it was school age and high school age boys. That has shifted. It's boys and girls now, and it's a much broader age range, even kids that are very little. So the original idea was it was kids that maybe were on the streets, were sniffing glue, and they needed help, to come off of that. Now it's a little bit broader, and as close as we can tell, it also functions as a fostering system, so that if there are parents who are trying to get off drugs, their little kids are coming there. So we did that on the Sunday and did a bunch of things. We went, there's a place that's called Dome Invalid, which means home for people who are invalids. And it's a home for young women who have developmental disabilities and challenges. And what we did was, usually we go there and we try to put on a program and try to do something. This year what we did was, instead of going to that institution, we paid for transportation and paid for workers to come so that they could leave the institution that they are always, always in. Always, always in. And they met us in a park. And we sang songs in the park with them. We played games with them. We had a blast. We did a lot of activities like that through the week, where instead of doing what we've done before, which has been to tour an institution and then put on a show, we did what Crossfire's better at, which is just hanging out with people or connecting with them. And all we had to do was pay for transportation or pay whatever so that they could come. So we spent some time doing that. We also connected several times at the rehab center that I told you about on the Sunday. We did photo sessions there so that each child can have a picture of themselves. We took an hour and just went around taking pictures so that they can have a picture of themselves, because they really treasure that. We did rotated groups through so that the group would be divided into three, and one would do games or sports, and one would do a Bible study, and one would do crafts. And then after half an hour, we rotate. So we did that kind of thing with the kids at the rehab center. We did, and then what we did, I'm going to tell you about the Saturday in a minute. Then we went to what's called Sviatonik Boarding School, S-V-I-T-A-N, okay. That is the place. How many remember us last year talking about this boarding school that just made all of us speechless? Walls had fallen out. Remember that? Outer walls had fallen out. And we had paid to help build part of an outer fence around the place, and it was just, nobody had been there, nobody had done anything. We went back there. I want you to know, where there were holes in the outer walls, there are no longer holes. I know. And I don't want to take all your thunder, but there's a lot of stuff that's been done there, and I want you to know that place desperately still needs far more help, which we were able to help towards, but it has changed. God is there, and it's a place of joy. And so we were super excited about that. So we spent several days interacting with the kids at that boarding school. Again, doing sports and crafts and a Bible story. We did a photo session with them as well. We did all kinds of things like that. For both the boarding school and the rehab center, we also paid for them to be able to go to McDonald's on a Saturday. We paid for their transportation so that they could go, and you go, McDonald's? Seriously? Seriously. Biggest treat in the world. Biggest miracle in the world. You know, Ed Dixon has talked about McDonald's is where you go when you're rich. Not a word of a lie. A wedding reception came into McDonald's while we were there on Saturday. And we were waiting for the grin to break out on the bride, like, yeah, isn't this funny? We're here in McDonald's. It did not. She couldn't figure out why we looked so stunned. There was a wedding reception at McDonald's. So for us to be able to take orphans or kids from very poor families to McDonald's just blew their mind. Another thing we got to do was we got to take them out to what they called an indoor amusement park at a mall. Really, it was a fancy arcade. And we got to pay for each of them to be able to play games. And then, of course, we got to play with them. So you're going to see pictures. There's one right there of us there. We did that 2 different afternoons with 2 different groups of kids. Took them out to the arcade, hung out with them, had a blast with them, developed relationship. How many know Crossfire is great at hanging out? and developing relationship and being friends. We're better at that than putting on a program. And so this just suited us. And so we got to do all kinds of things like that. We also spent on Friday, we went to what's called Buri Oogli, Buriooogli. It's a home, an institution for men with mental disabilities and also physical disabilities. It can be a very difficult place to visit. There are sights and sounds and smells that can really impact you. It has been fixed up greatly and still is a difficult place to visit. What we did was we paid and helped to organize for a barbecue. And so they all got a hot dog, they all got a banana. We helped put it all together, helped pass them out and everything, and they were just thrilled. And so we did that at Buriooogli this time. And then we also connected with a group called Rainbow Ministry. Rainbow Ministry is a network of families who have children with disabilities, and instead of institutionalizing their children, which is the norm in Ukraine, they've chosen to keep their children at home with them and to raise them themselves. It's very, very difficult to do that. There's very, very little government or financial support, or none at all, for that. And there's also a great deal of stigma attached to that, because people don't understand, why would you keep your child at home? You should just put them in an institution. That's best for everyone. And so families that choose to do that can become very isolated and very lonely and all of those things. And so Rainbow is a network of families that support each other, because they all have their kids at home. And what we did, we got to do home visits for 8 different families and bring them donations and bring them food and just pray with them and hang out with them, do what Crossfire does best. So we got to do that. We also, there's a group called Family Dorms, and both of those words I would use loosely. So it's a place, we didn't visit there, but we took them to McDonald's, but it's a place where essentially when orphan girls grow up, and they tend to, when they're 18, then they're turfed out of the orphanage, they go live on the streets, often become pregnant, and then they're in desperate poverty. And Family Dorms tends to be that group of people where they live, moms and their kids. It's not always the case, but often that's the case. And so, for example, I connected with one mother who has a baby and a little girl who's about 6 years old. They share a room with another mother and her children, and this mother and her 2 children have a couch that they sleep on in that half a room. All the kitchen and bathroom, that's all shared facilities and stuff. So there's a lot of poverty there too. We took them to McDonald's. And then we visited, so that was all the stuff that does through Loads of Love, through Ed Dixon stuff. Then the churches. We went to, I think, 5 different village services. They were amazing, and I'm going to really try not to go on. But I want you to know, we have written in our vision statement that we wanted to develop a long-term relationship with one group of people. And it is showing. We have been back to that same spot and to some of those same village churches 6 years, 5 years in a row. And not only do we know the pastors, now we know the congregation. And so we would be up there and we would go, hey, I know that person. Hey, I know this person. And now we know prayers that we prayed a year ago or 2 years ago that have been answered. Or we're seeing congregations that have grown. One church in particular that's my personal favorite. It's just every year I go there and I just love it. Pastor Sergey and his wife Vika. And they normally have had like 3 people in their church, 8 people in their church, maybe 10. They had, I don't know, it was packed so tight we couldn't tell. It was packed so tight that Jeff was standing here playing his guitar, and the translator was standing right in front of him, and he was struggling to play his guitar because she kept leaning back on his guitar, and the congregation started right here. I mean, we were just squished. And I looked at the pastor and said, what happened? He said, a year went by. So at each village church, we were able to bring basically about 3 suitcases worth of stuff. Clothes, scarves. Our deaf church, Adele's mom and Mary knitted a bunch of scarves, and we were able to give that away, mostly to seniors, but also to some children as well. And to each of those places where we were able to bring donations like that, dental stuff, eyeglasses, all of that kind of thing. For the kids, all of those kids things, we gave tons of dental things, and we gave children's clothes, and it was just such a blessing. I want you to know it is not easy carrying a dozen extra suitcases through airports. Totally worth it. Totally worth it. And so thank you for doing that. And so, and then we were part of the big church for their midweek service. We ran the service or participated in it Sunday morning, and the youth service Sunday afternoon. And so basically we just kind of went day and night until we got on a plane and came home again. And so I just wanted you to know sort of the overview of all of that. I wanted you to know what happened with the extra suitcases that we took, where it all got given away. And also, our board sent us with $2,000 that we were permitted to give away where we saw the need. And so a lot of that paid for the transportation that I told you about, paid for McDonald's, paid for, we took Tanya and Jenya, who were here last summer and who we support as a church. We took them out for pizza and spent an afternoon just connecting with them and encouraging them and blessing them. And we were thrilled to do that. And so that money paid for all of that. And we held back 500 of it just for the end so that we could figure out what we wanted to do. And what we did with that last 500 was we gave 100 to the one village church that I mentioned to you because they really need it. And we gave 400 to the boarding school to continue building the wall. It's almost finished, but they have some wall left to finish around their school and to help with their roof. And then we collected, there was some money that had been converted and, to Ukrainian, and we gave that. There was one village church we went to that was supposed to be a service. And what happened was one of their very key leaders was killed in a car accident the day before we went there. And so the whole congregation was grieving. And it was, what are we going to do? And all this. And they said, no, we want to have a service anyway. We went there. It was incredible. And what we did was we took some of that, it turned out to be about $60 US that we gave to the family of the man who died to help them out with that kind of a thing. And then there were some other things that happened as well. If you want a complete breakdown, ask me in a couple days, I'll have it written down. But that's kind of what covered and what happened. So I think that's all I have to say. So I've asked the team members to each prepare a few minutes and to tell one story. And I'm sure they each have struggled to find out what story they want to tell. And I just want you to know they have way more stories. And they would love you to hear them. Take them for coffee. Ask them out. Do whatever. They would love to share it. But that's what we're going to do. So why don't we just start at this end? Monica, I'm going to let you go first. You can tell two. Okay. Yes. Because you're first, you can tell two.
Okay. Sounds good. So there's when I got home and my mother asked me, so like, tell me some stories. How was Ukraine? I'm like, where do I begin? Like, there's just so many. One thing that really stuck out to me, see, my mother got me this, I'm not wearing it, but I had a bracelet that I was wearing in the Ukraine, and it had a cross on it, and it looked like diamonds. And when I got there, I was like, I really feel like I should give it to somebody, to a girl, and I didn't know who yet. It was put on my heart. So when we went to the park with the disabled girls and the children in the park, I met this really, really nice girl. Her name was I think Diana. She was so sweet. Although I couldn't understand what she was saying, it's like there wasn't a language barrier. We had balloons. We were playing. It was so fun. And it was time to go, and they were walking away. And I was like, oh, no, I need to give her this bracelet. I have to. So one of the women that was working with them, I was like, can you please give this bracelet to her? I didn't get to give it to her myself, but the woman who gave it to her, she showed me pictures of her with the bracelet on, and it just really touched my heart that I had the opportunity to do that. And it was just amazing. So that's one story. Another story was the last village we went to. The funny thing is, although we can't speak Russian, and a lot of the people like in the village, they know that, but they still come up to you and try to talk to you, and we're just like, yeah. So we were handing out, we're like, da. So we were handing out blankets to the babushkas, the older ladies in the village. And I'm sure a lot of people know it's like God speaking to you, you know. I was like, I felt like I had to give this certain blanket to this one woman. I was drawn to this one babushka. So I walked over to her and I gave her the blanket. And the rest of the night she was just like following me around. She was drawn to me, I guess. And she was trying to talk to me, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. So I finally went and got the translator. And what really touched my heart is the woman, she was talking to me, and she told me that, even though I just met her, she told me that I was like a grandchild to her. So it was really touching. So great experience. It was amazing.
it is really hard to settle on one story. So, and I have everything all mixed up. So I sound like I don't know where I was or what I was doing. So it was early in the trip, and we went to a place and hung out with kids. And Gloria and I were together and did a Bible study. Mayor had brought a book of children's devotions. And so we led the devotion. It was about when we run our own lives, that we're running on autopilot, and that gets us into trouble. So it was about we need to focus on God, and He is the pilot of our plane. And so we get in there, and the group is older than we think they're going to be. We thought it was going to be younger kids, so we had more of a coloring type thing to do. But it's awesome to have this opportunity to have to think on your feet and move your thinking and be with the kids. So we had older kids. So we ramped up and talked to them in adult language and told them that in our we had handed out paper and pencil crayons and crayons, and this group is too old for that. And so I said to Gloria, let's tell them the story about being in Crossfire. So we told them that our pastor hands out paper. Now, we haven't done it here for a little while, but it used to be quite a practice that we could have paper and pencils, and while the sermon is happening, we could either draw pictures or write words or whatever it is that's moving inside of us to put it down on the paper, whatever that is. So we told the kids that, and there were a couple of older children who were really struggling, 16, 17, and we know that they had pain, but we couldn't have them, so we couldn't have them color on this paper that was purple and white. So we said maybe you could turn it over and just write what's on your heart. And so to have that opportunity and to watch that happen and to kind of share what we do here, and that maybe that'll work for those who are struggling, and we don't know what their pain is. We don't know what their hardship is, but we do know that it's a difficult hardship, and that maybe that will just help them, that they can have a moment when they're not sure what to do and just write it. So they did that. They cooperated and wrote their things, and they kept, a couple that were struggling kept it to themselves, which is quite all right. And then we can just pray that God will use that experience for them to help them connect to Him.
Every year I usually name us for some reason, so this year we were the Smiling Six, and we did that a lot. But I would say because of all the years that I have gone, I think God really made me more observant this year. As to others, I was like a new child, just like with a new toy, but I got to see pockets of darkness that I wouldn't normally see in the other trips. And one of the first pockets was, and then what I mean by darkness is seeing that quick darkness, but then God's light real quick. And what happened was, as we were traveling from Kiev to Kriva Rog, there was fog, and it was so thick you couldn't see in front of you, and all you could have is faith in God. And you know, some of you that have been on Kriva Rog roads, they're not smooth, and you know, so we're driving along, and all of a sudden there was a little swerve. And me and Gloria are at the back of the van, and I looked to the side of me because Vova went like this, and there, out of nowhere, was a transport truck lights. And I was like, wow. And Gloria's like, whoa. And Vova didn't even know. So there, for me, was like, wow. And then there was other pockets, too, you know, when we got pulled over and by the police on the way home, and Patty, Jeff, and I, and we started praying. And the grace of God came through again. But there was one particular pocket that really was a lot of darkness. And for me, I can usually handle any kids. But this particular day was hard. It was at the boarding school, and we were going to do an activity, but they weren't paying attention. They weren't listening to me, and my translator got a migraine right at that time. So I'm like, oh no, what do I do? Oh God, please help me, because I can't translate to them the activity, and she's trying to get water and get her pills down, and so then I said, okay. So I decided to tell them two stories, a good story and a bad story. And when I say these kids were all sitting around this table, there was one particularly rowdy boy who everybody was following him. So I made a good story, which is true stories that happened in Sanford. One story was where a girl, she had all these gifts that God had given her since she was 7. She could draw, she was smart, and she could speak fluent French and English, and she was taking Spanish. And all through the years, I would say, wow, you're so lucky. When you're older, you're going to get a great job, and, you're going to make good money, and you're going to be so good in life, and God's going to really do good things for you. And, I would tell her that a lot. And to this day, she's now one of the highest paid young adults in Canada, in the government, making over $100,000 a year. So I shared that with them, and they were like, oh, and then I said, now let me tell you about another story. This is a bad story. So I went over to the fellow that was the wild boy, and I put my hands on his shoulders, and he had these cool, earphones, and I said, there was a boy just like you. He was cool. He had earphones like you. He was he had nice clothes. All the girls liked him, and he could play all the sports, but he wasn't so smart in school. And later on, what had happened was, because he wasn't so smart in school, he wasn't able to play basketball anymore in school. And because he couldn't play basketball anymore in school, he got really mad and he quit school. So when he quit school, he ended up hanging around different kids. And then he started doing drugs. And I watched them all go from rowdiness to like this. And I could see the darkness leaving and God's light coming in. And then I said, he started doing drugs, drinking, and the next thing you know, he was dealing drugs. And a couple years later, they found his body in a river. He was murdered. And what he left behind was a son that will never see his father again. And I said, what I want you to do now is, our kids from church made these rings of worship. And I would like all of you to make a worship ring for our kids back at home, so that when we're at home and we're worshiping on Sunday, we're going to pray for you every Sunday. And lo and behold, all the kids made them, and then there was one left. And our translator brought it up, and that's this one. It's from the boy that I talked to. He says, I only did one color. And I said, that's okay, it's unique, and I'll know it's you, and I will pray every Sunday for you. And it represents the blood of Christ and love. And so that's my story.
I have a lot of stories, and people who know me know I love to tell stories, but this isn't so much a story as an observation. One of the things that I had asked from God when I went there was that I wanted a real knowing, really to get to know Him deeper. And in reflecting, when I got home, I thought, oh, I don't know that we did lots, we went lots, but I didn't really think that anything huge had happened to me because there wasn't any bolt of lightning. So, but I sat down and I thought, what story will I tell? And this happened over a couple of days, and I sat down and I started reading the journal I had written. And the thing that stood out to me over and over was the people who served there, the people that were part of Loads of Love and the villages, and the people, there were so many people, and many of them were women, and if you saw them in one place, you'd see them over and over again in other instances, like other charities, and they would be there, and always smiling, always happy, always serving. And one particular girl, we kind of noticed she had a beautiful dress on. But by day 3, we realized she's still wearing the exact same dress. They were not seeking any fame for themselves. They were not seeking any reward for themselves. They were there doing the duty as it needed to be done. And I was really impressed with the selflessness of that.
Yep.
And in that, I will say that, and it impressed me that there were so many women that were heads of their churches and pastors and leading organizations, that I was just blown away by this. And I reflected on that, and I also reflected that, wow, how Patty got up ahead of us every morning and prepared our day and our sermon, and how she led us. And at the airport, I said, it's kind of like she's watching the ducks from behind. She would slip back behind us to make sure all of us were in front. And I was very impressed with, I thought, we have a fabulous leader here. And I thought that I hadn't had this lightning bolt till this morning. I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was wide awake. And I thought, the thing in my head was, I have a verse for you, get up. And I have to tell you, these things don't happen to me very often. And so I got up and I read, and this was the verse that he had for me. So those who are last now will someday be first, and those who are first will someday be last. And I went back to sleep, and I had this incredible, joyous dream. I was on the top of a big, tall building, and it was a flat roof. And for some reason, I was standing on the edge of it thinking of stepping off. And I heard, just step out, I got ya. And I did. I stepped out, and I was suspended in air. And I was able to move and be free, and I walked. And then I decided to touch down. And when I touched down, the people of the Ukraine were there. Our team was there. People I knew. And it was just, I woke up, and I told Ken this morning, I said, it was the most joyous thing I'd ever experienced. And so here I was, all set to have it happen in the Ukraine. And I'm sure it was happening, but the fruition of it came when I came home.
Nice. Just going to step up. It's okay, no problem. Hey, Crossfire. I love you back. And I really missed you guys a lot. But at the same time, we were there doing your work. So I just wanted to mention a couple things. I want to thank you all for supporting us in prayer, first and foremost. We needed it, and we felt it. I know we did. Every day there was a charge from God. And that was great because the days were long and they were tiring. Also, the financial support is huge. I don't want you guys to miss this. The fact of the matter is, going to McDonald's and going to these places and spending time with these people, you have to understand something. These kids, they have zero money. They have nothing. They have the clothes on their backs because somebody gave them those clothes. And they have one outfit. That's it. They have nothing. So I don't want you to miss, like, the McDonald's thing. Yeah, it's easy here. I mean, sure, I got to, I'm on my way somewhere. I got to eat something. I'll cram a burger down my throat. That's how we do it here. Over there, it's an extreme pleasure for them. And also, they feel so much loved by Canadians that come halfway around the world to take them. And they find God's love in that. So I want you guys to understand that. My story isn't surrounding any of that. Any of the pictures you see, mostly I have my guitar on. I played pretty much nonstop, which was great because I'm always in the booth now, and I don't get to play my guitar much here anymore. But that's okay. Over there, I had a guitar on, and one day we went to we were on this amazing race that their team, Loads of Love, set up, and it was with Rainbow. That's the organization that has families with kids or young adults that are living at home with major disabilities. And they called it an amazing race because they split us into 2 teams, and each team had 4 visits to make. And truly amazing. Again, we're dealing with a country that 20 years ago was communist, and the, I guess, advent of democracy hasn't done anything for them. It's done nothing. There's no money in the system. Their government is extremely corrupt. The Orange Revolution that happened a few years ago did nothing for them yet again. So there's not a lot of hope there. Anyways, I say that to tell you that they don't have any government support. I mean, if they do, it's very minor, it's very small. Anyways, so Rainbow connects these families together, and they help out where they can. We went to one home where we were meeting with a gentleman by the name of Sergey, and he had a sister named Tanya, and their picture went by. You'll see them. She's in a wheelchair. She's dressed in pink. And we got in there, and we met him. He was very pleasant, very reserved, but very pleased that we had come to see him. Now, he also was very interested in guitar. I got to play a song for them, and Tanya, now you need to understand too, Tanya is completely incapacitated. She needs 24-hour care. She needs that 24/7, 365. Their mother and father, their father passed away, I don't know, about 5 years ago, and not too recently their mother passed away. So this young man who's 25 is looking after his sister who's 28 all the time. So you ask me how he works, how he gets money, how he does anything. You know, you just can't. I would have got so bogged down thinking about that, but you have to set that aside because you can't think about the problem. You have to somehow think about bringing God's light into that situation. And let me tell you, that's challenging because, well, it's challenging for me, not for God, right? Amen? Because that's what happened. Basically, I played a song, and when I played the song, Tanya, he brought Tanya into the room. He had to carry her in and set her in the wheelchair. And she has not muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is completely debilitating. She could barely even work her lungs to say anything. Although he understood everything she said, we couldn't hear one word. So whether there was a language barrier or not didn't matter because you couldn't hear her speak. She basically breathed words, and they were very few. So anyways, I played the song, and he was really, Sergey was really interested in the guitar, you know, and he said, you know, I'm really interested in guitar. I'm really, you know, one day I'd love to learn how to play. And, you know, he said he knew a few chords, and I said, well, here, try this. And I handed him the guitar, and he knew no chords, and that's fine. He got to, you know, pluck around the strings and all that kind of stuff, and then he gave it back to me, and he said, hold on for a second. Went and got his phone. Cell phone plans there are ridiculously cheap. Everybody has a cell phone. It's not like here. $5 a month, everything. Anyways, something like that. It's ridiculous. So anyways, he had an app on his phone that had a guitar. So he started strumming it, you know, and I started to jam with him a little bit and playing, and you know, he wanted me to show him, and on his phone there was some buttons there that had all the different, like about 5 different chords. So I hit a button and strum it, and hit a button and strum it, and he's like, oh, that's how it works. So that was all well and good. Now, guys, I'm kind of rushing through this because you know, I only have just a wee bit of time and I'm almost out. But we left that house, and I thought to myself, okay, you know, there's got to be something we can do for this guy. He's 24 hours looking after his sister. He does odd jobs. That's how he makes money. And the only reason why he has that house is because his parents left it to him in the will. And it's in a building, by the way. It's not a very nice building. He does the best he can to keep it clean inside the house, and he's doing some renos there. So we talked about it, and the team, basically, we all decided to pool our money together. And when I say our money, I mean personal money that we brought to buy souvenirs and junk, which we didn't buy. Instead, we pooled our money, and somebody knew somebody that had a shop for a guitar, and we went and purchased a guitar for him. and the ladies also thought that they could pool some money together of their own money and get some groceries and some clothing for Tanya, and they're the only people we went back to visit out of the whole day was them, and we went back and gave Sergey the guitar, and again he was I think he was taken back by it. He was trying to be proper with us, and I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm not expecting a big anything. I just thought, okay, listen, here's a guitar, and Tatiana, the person who runs Rainbow, knows somebody at her church that can, give lessons and all that. And so that was all going to work out. So I said to him, I said, listen, when you learn how to play, I'll be back in a year probably, and then we'll sit down and we'll jam. And he was like, that's great. Well, later in that week, so we left. Later that week, we were at a meeting with Ed, Loads of Love, and Tatiana is part of that because Loads of Love works with Rainbow. And I was out of the room, and they called me into the room. I know no Russian. I know 5 words and a couple of slang words. So that didn't help me. But the translators were there. Thank you, Lord. And Tatiana told me she wanted to speak to me personally because apparently Sergey called her up in tears saying that it was a gift of God, that God came and gave him a guitar and the gift of music for his sister, because his sister loves music. You could see her leaning into the guitar when I was playing. I don't know how to tell you how moved I am, because music is so huge for me. So yeah, I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to go there, and thank you so much for supporting us. And I said this last year, and I'm going to say it again, because I think it's huge. If you're wondering what God has for you, and you think you've come to a place where where things are working and everything's good, that's great. But I'm challenging you. Save your money, find a way. But you go to Ukraine and see what more God has for you. Because this trip, it was about us bringing God to them. But in actuality, we came back with far more of a blessing than I think we ever took. So I encourage you, think about it. It's worth it. The kids' lives that you change, the moment of time that God gives you with one individual after another, after another, after another, is absolutely fantastic. And it's worth doing, and I know there are some of you that have gone, and you know what I'm saying. So, be encouraged, and thank you so much for your support.
If I could take just a couple minutes to tell you one more story that was just really unexpected. We have as a team 4 statements that we live by, that we prep for, and all of that. And I want you to know you guys sent a fantastic team this year. Just a great team of people. They worked together well. It's so easy to lead. So it was awesome. But one of our statements that we have is that we're there to serve whoever, whenever, however. And that means not just serving the formal things that come our way, but it means we serve each other, we serve our translators, we serve the unexpected people that happen to cross our paths, and there's never a time when when we can go, okay, I'm not serving now, right? So it's one of our core values we live by. So there's just a thing that happened that I think God was so in. I was at a conference just a couple days before we went to Ukraine. And at that conference, I met a pastor who I knew of but had never met. And so I met him and knew that there was some common ground as far as Ukraine, and so just said, well, I'm headed to Ukraine in day after tomorrow. And he said, there's a girl from my church there. Her name's Alana, in the country of Ukraine. I think she's in the city where you're going. If you see her, tell her we said hi. If you happen to, I go, okay, because what are the odds, right? We lived in the same apartment as her for 2 weeks. Seriously. We walked in, and she's there, this quiet, shy, 22-year-old maybe. And I looked at her, I said, are you Alana? And she goes, uh-huh. And so she was from Barrie, and she was there for a month or month and a half. She was very shy and was there just all on her own, doing work, but all on her own. And because she's so shy, she's missing on some of the interactions because it's easy to miss out. And so our team being who it is, and Crossfire being who it is, and this statement of we're here to serve whoever, whenever, however, we figured we're there to serve her too. So we adopted her onto our team. We asked her, we said, you can come with us if you want for all the stuff we're doing, be part of our team. So she joined in. Now here's the cool thing that happened. Because she's part of the team, I said, okay, well, if you're part of the team, then when we go to a village service, well, now you got to give a testimony too, because you're on our team. And she had never done anything like that before, was really nervous about it. But she had a whole thing that was a God confirmation for her that she said, okay, I know God's telling me I need to do this, so I'm willing. That was on a Wednesday. And we had set her up that she was going to tell her testimony on a Friday night at a village service. Thursday night at midnight, we found out that this Friday service was the one where this man had been killed in a car accident. And so now this Friday night service, we don't really know what to expect. We didn't know Thursday night if it was going to be actually the funeral or just a memorial service or if it would be canceled or what. We didn't know what to expect. By Friday, we knew that they were going ahead. It wasn't going to be a funeral, but it was going to be a service that was somewhat a memorial service, but it had been promoted in the village, so people will come that don't even know, and so please do a service. So I told Alana this halfway through Friday. By the way, the testimony that you're so nervous about giving is now going to be in a place where someone has just been killed in a car accident and the whole congregation is grieving. Well, she just about, she said, well, I don't have to give it. I said, well, I can't force you to give it, but God already confirmed to you that this was something you were to do before any of us knew. And so I think you should still do it. I said, I'm still going to preach a sermon. Somebody else is going to sing. We're still going to. Okay, so she took a deep breath and did it. Can I just tell you, the very, very short form of her testimony is the story of her own father dying when she was 6 years old of cancer. And the anger and the grief that she went through because of that lasted for years. And a couple of times thought she had worked it through and was going to be okay, and then something else would happen. Her best friend was killed in a car accident and things like that. And so she was just devastated. And finally came to a point where she had decided years later, so maybe just a year ago now, that the world would be better off without her. Her family would be better off without her. And so she had set a date of when she was going to end her life. You have to understand, I didn't know any of this beforehand. I just said, can you give a testimony? So I was sitting listening to her say this in the service going. And then she said the date she had set was for March 3rd. That was the date when she was going to end her life. And then her mother said to her, listen, can you come down to the basement, help me clean out some things and all this kind of stuff. And so she said, okay. So she was downstairs. Nobody knew this was her plan. It was a year-long plan that she had. And while she was in the basement, she opened a box and pulled out a piece of paper that was her baby dedication certificate from when her father had been alive and her parents had dedicated her life to the Lord. And her name is on there, and her parents' names are on there. And guess what the date is of her baby dedication? March the 3rd. And just like that, she knew that God had known all along everything she was going to go through. And God had had plans for her before any of it had happened. And so he was going to bring her through this too. And so she found healing and got help and was baptized again this past summer and now is in Ukraine. This is the story that was told to a congregation who had just lost somebody so important to them. And she gave them this message that God already knew. God would help them, and God would pour love into them. Can I just tell you what a God appointment that was? How amazing is that, right? So if you ever see a young lady come in who's quiet and shy with a really beautiful smile named Alana, that's because she's visiting us from Barrie. We threatened to go to her church and visit her there, and she seemed to think it would be better if she came here. So she's part of our team this year. And so I just want to thank you for sending the team that you did, for making us the kind of church that engages our world with the extravagant love of Jesus, that walks that out in prayer and in finances and in support and in sending a team year after year. I want you to know we get there now and kids come up to us. I remember you. Adults come up to us. I remember you from last year. They can't wait truly to see the team from Hamilton come. It's a special team that comes, and they know it, and they know we're their friends, that we don't just say we're coming back and not come back. We come back. And it makes a huge impact. So why don't you stand with me? And God, I say thank you for your family, your kids all around the world. Thank you so much for God appointments that we couldn't possibly see coming. Thank you so much for, generosity of team members and of church members here, so that we can bless people in ways that we don't even know until we get there. But then when the need arises, we can go, we can help there, we can help there, we can help there. And it makes a difference. God, I thank you for leading us probably 10 years ago to write down as a mission statement that we wanted to connect with one group of people and connect well there. Thank you for that, and then for helping us to find them and helping them to find us. God, I pray for the friends that we've made there who are even now finishing up their services as well. I pray that you would bless them, that you would keep them safe. I pray specifically, Lord, for the church who lost their member to a car accident. I pray that you would pour comfort and blessing into Pastor Vitali and his congregation. Lord, we pray over the kids that we connected with, the kids that heard stories from Mare and from Gloria and Wendy, and who played sports and stuff with Monica and with Jeff, and who learned music. All of those kids, Lord, I pray that you would continue to bring people across their path so that they would grow up knowing that God loves them and that they have a purpose in life. God, I pray for our congregation here, and I thank you, God, because it's my favorite church in the world. I pray you would bless each one of us as we go about our day and as we go about our week. Help us to honor you really and truly with all of our hearts and to bless each other. And I thank you for it all. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I believe there's coffee downstairs. And if you would like to receive prayer, come on up. God bless you. Have a great week.